Let's bring in former U.S. Attorney Guy Lewis, joining us live there. Thanks for being with us today on this St. Patrick's Day. So I want to ask you first, the only person, as we just heard Molly say, the only person to see the final report is Attorney General William Barr. His office knows what the vote so far in Congress has been and how the president feels about it. What do you predict is going to happen with this information? He's indicated he'll release some, but will he release all?
I think I take him at his word when he testified at his confirmation hearings that he's going to do everything he can to release it. So I think you're going to see a large report that sort of connects the dot here in terms of how Mueller started and where we are now.
All right. Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But a lot of people obviously, pushing for as much information as we can get out of this. I want to pivot here and talk about the former Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. A lot of news this week. Just minutes after Manafort heard his sentence in the federal case, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. announced a 16-count indictment on a year-long residential mortgage fraud scheme. We were reporting on this in New York this week, which included conspiracy, falsifying business records, and on it went. He could get 138 years if convicted on these new state charges. So I wanted to ask you what you think will happen here, because these charges will stand even if the president pardons him on the federal case. This we know. But what do you make of the New York charges?
I think for the most part that it was grandstanding. I mean, in my experience, having done this for almost 40 years now, you almost never see a guy prosecuted once in Virginia, a second time in D.C., and then a third time up in New York in a state jurisdiction. So, yes, while the president may have limited pardon power as it relates to the state charges, New York also has a double jeopardy clause in their Constitution. So I think they got big problems in terms of the charges up in New York. I don't think they're going to stand.
You don't think they're going to stand? I mean, these are a lot of charges and a lot of time he's looking at if convicted. What if it's just a portion of those? A lot of people are discussing this week, asking if Cy Vance has a problem with this double jeopardy issue, or if Paul Manafort, is he still up against the wall with the new case because the state charges have substantially different victims?
Having sat down and done these kind of cases where, as a federal prosecutor, when I was U.S. attorney, sometimes you'd see a state prosecution and it wouldn't turn out. Say in a civil rights case, it was just really a miscarriage of justice. And so you'd look at it and you'd say, you know what, we need to prosecute. You look at Manafort here, and to be honest, the guy's almost 70 years old. He's going to do about a little more than 8 years in jail. Really, what is the justification for charging them in state court, especially when the charges, for the most part, overlap and are virtually the same thing?
Right. Well, and he obviously talked to the judge about that, asking for the judge to consider his age, where he's been at in his life and with his family. So, we'll see how this moves on with the case in New York. Guy Lewis, I want to thank you for your time, for being here and lending your expertise. Thank you so much.
Got it. Glad to.